L'ordine del giorno reca le dichiarazioni del Consiglio e della Commissione, attuazione e monitoraggio delle disposizioni relative ai diritti dei cittadini nell'accordo di recesso del Regno Unito. Resta con noi la Presidente von der Leyen. Do la parola a Salutiamo e diamo la parola al Segretario di Stato Nikolina Brnjac. Prego, a nome del Consiglio. Prego, a lei la parola.
President, honourable members, as we are about to see the withdrawal agreement enter into force, basically unchanged as compared to its version of 2019, except the provisions regarding Ireland, we should be pleased in retrospect with our decision not to accept a carve out of the provision on the citizens' rights as requested by many. Indeed, having done so would have led to a level of protection far weaker than we have at present, with Part 2 of the agreement dealing with citizens' rights, fully embedded in the whole agreement and with various remedies foreseen should the UK not deliver adequately in implementing these provisions. This does not mean that we should rest on the laurels, and I'm grateful for the European Parliament for having scheduled this debate today. I also welcome the draft resolution tabled, as it lists a number of concerns regarding the preservation of the citizens' rights, the administrative procedure in relation to residents' rights, the limited assistance offered to citizens in this respect, or the effectiveness of the UK independent authority due to oversee the implementation of these provisions. This does not necessarily mean that everything is rosy on the EU side. It is important, as you note in your resolution, to encourage the Member States to adopt a generous attitude regarding the rights of UK citizens having decided to settle in the European Union. We should also insist that both the Commission and the UK independent authority are rigorous in their monitoring of the implementation of Part 2 of the agreement. There is also more that can be done regarding the awareness of citizens on both sides of the Channel, however protective of the provision of the withdrawal agreement. They would be of little use to citizens, especially vulnerable ones, if they are not aware of them nor of the administrative steps needed to benefit from them. And certainly the Parliament can have a role as well in reaching out to citizens and contributing to their information. Of course, all these provisions, even though their effect will last beyond the transition period, will not cover citizens who would consider settling in a later stage. Although we are well aware that the line of the UK's government is to put an end to the free movement of the persons, we should make sure that the future relationship that we'll negotiate shortly will be ambitious enough in terms of mobility. This will have to be accompanied with the preservation of certain rights for the citizens concerned. Let me conclude by noting the large degree of convergence that exists between your position of citizens' rights as developed in your various resolutions and the priorities of the Council. This is a clear illustration of the commonality of purposes of our two institutions as regards Brexit. Our common efforts should contribute to ensure that the provision on citizens' rights in the withdrawal agreement allow EU citizens and UK nationals, as well as their family members, to continue to live, work or study in their host country, as they have chosen to do. Thank you very much for your attention.
Grazie, adesso sentiamo la Presidente von der Leyen, prego, a lei la parola.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President and honourable members. Last week I was in London and I had the opportunity to speak to students about the future of the relationship between the United Kingdom and the European Union. And after I finished the speech, as always, the floor was open to the students and the audience, and the very first question that came was not about trade, it was not about financial services, it was not about security, as important as these topics are. It was, of course, about citizens' rights. And the same question came back time and again with different personal twists. One came from a young man who came from Benelux, living in the UK, who was, of course, worried about his future. Another came from a British lady who has an Italian husband, who was worried about his status, what's going to happen with him. And while the questions may have been subtle different, the reasons for asking them were always the same. People want certainty about their lives and their future, and certainty about the future of their loved ones. And I'm speaking here about 3.5 million citizens in the UK who came from European Union member states, and round about 1 million British people living elsewhere in the European Union. Now, these are large numbers, but behind each of these numbers are people with their very own personal stories. Some are citizens from another European Union country, but they are born in the United Kingdom. Others have arrived later. Many have married, have children, have gone to university, have started their careers, and they work in the UK and respectively in the European Union. So they teach children, they treat patients, they care for the elderly, they work in farms or factories, they have started their own business and provide a living to many more. So whatever their own personal story is, they all have one thing in common, and that is they want to have peace of mind. They want to have a plan for their futures and the future of their families, and all they want to have is to feel at home in the place they call home. Therefore, honourable members, protecting these citizens' rights has always been our top priority. From the moment the referendum result came clear, thanks to the excellent work of Michel Barnier and his negotiation team, the withdrawal agreement provides comprehensive guarantees for these citizens. It gives them the protection and the certainty they need. It allows them to stay where they live today under the same conditions for as long as they want and without any discrimination based on their nationality. This withdrawal agreement, and with what we have agreed on, puts, of course, clear obligations on the United Kingdom and on the European Union to safeguard these rights. One thing is to put them on paper, another thing is to implement them. So once the House has ratified the withdrawal agreement, our top priority will be to implement our shared obligations, both in letter and in spirit. And for me, this is a legal issue with a moral imperative. The good news is that the United Kingdom has already begun implementing the European Union settlement scheme. To date, about 2.5 million European citizens living in the United Kingdom have already applied for resident status. Most of these people have now received proof of their right to remain. This is good news. But you also know there are cases, some have not, and many more are yet to apply. And there are a number of concerns that have always been raised. There are the famous cases of the French bakers and the Polish chefs that shine a light on some of the issues, but seriously, there are many other cases where people are confused or unable to apply for whatever reasons, or others have received requests for more proof despite having lived in the country for 40 years or more. So we are close in contact with the citizens and the UK authorities on these issues. We need to avoid any discrimination or added complexity during the application process. We need to ensure that all citizens, especially the most vulnerable, are fully supported throughout the process. And we need the guarantee that the independent monitoring authority can act in full independence to deal with complaints. This is of utmost importance. From our side, the Commission will keep a close and vigilant eye on the implementation. We're ready to help European Union citizens living in the United Kingdom to ensure they are properly informed and supported. And of course, we will do the same when it comes to British citizens living in the European Union. All these questions I've been speaking about, I've raised with the Prime Minister Johnson last week when I visited London. We will closely cooperate with the United Kingdom to make sure that we can get this right and that we can solve any problems as swiftly as possible. Finally, honourable members, the good news is that there will be continuity for the European Union citizens living in the United Kingdom and vice versa for the British citizens living in the European Union at the end of the transition period. But after the end of the transition period, the United Kingdom will be a third country. And Brexit will mean changes to those who will want to make their future life on either side of the Channel. We will have to negotiate a new way forward, and we're getting ready to formulate the mandate for those negotiations ahead of the 1st of February. As we have done in the past, we will, in these negotiations, also make the citizens' rights our main priority, and we will always negotiate in good faith to build a new comprehensive partnership with our British friends. As I've said to those students in London, it's the good old story about old friends and new beginnings. Thank you.